It's Rhythm and Soul Radio. I am Marco Nobles. We have our guest line open, our virtual studio open for very, very, very talented brother, uh, soul violinist Lee England Jr. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, man. How about yourself?
Doing well, doing well. I said this before we started the interview. I'll say it again. You just did a performance here in New York. Unfortunately, I could not make it. I missed it, and I so apologize. And I heard I need to apologize because it was an amazing show that you really, got to expand for what people, how people see you. You did a full show with a full orchestra with you.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Talk about that because that'll lead me back into like the beginning because it seems like your career is so diverse and different, and this would maybe like a beginning of a culmination.
Yeah, I like that. You know, it's interesting because yes, I have been afforded a very interesting and adventurous and fun career as a violinist, and I've always been into expanding and pushing boundaries, and just trying different things. And so I've always known and always felt like music was better played with group. It's like
Mm,
one thing to be doing things by myself, but I was always writing for a bigger group. And so for the past year and a half or so here in New York, I've been very adamant about creating a string group, and not even just creating a string group, but creating a community for string players
mm,
because it doesn't exist, um, especially one that talks best practices and is a safe space for conversations. And we talk about everything from how much you get paid for gigs to improvisation. I can't talk improvisation and connecting with your instrument, and understanding like the spiritual aspect of music and how it literally just you know we vibrate some things and a note comes out, and
mm.
it gets kind of deep. So to be able to share that with a crowd, to have the orchestra there, to have some of my friends pull up and perform, it was an experience. That's pretty much,
Right.
yeah, it was definitely an experience, and it's one that I'm planning to recreate in several different ways.
Excellent, excellent. Now you're known as the soul violinist. So violin is your first instrument, but you produce, you sing, you are you rhyme. Folks may remember you because you were a part of the making the band process and shows with Diddy and all of that.
Mhm.
So talk about. I mean, first of all, I guess thanks to your father who kind of helped push you to continue to work on the violin when you originally started.
Yeah, yeah, he definitely. I mean, I love telling the story about how I started because, I wanted to quit immediately because the violin it sounded terrible. So for me to go to my father and immediately tell him that I quit, and for him to very wise and Jedi mind trick me into thinking that practicing was quitting. And so
Mm.
I told him I wanted to quit. He said, "Sure, you can quit. You just got to practice 15 minutes a day." And literally, that practicing turned into 13 hours a day. By the time I realized what it was,
Wow.
and by that time, I was in love.
Right, right, right. Now you did you go to college on a music scholarship?
No, I didn't.
No.
I went
Okay.
to Southern Illinois. Actually, I will be there in February.
Okay.
But I went there. It's not a music school, and I actually there's been like three times in my life where I wanted to quit playing violin. The first was when I first picked it up. The second was when I got to college, and the third was when my father passed. So
Hmm.
when I got to college, I felt like my skill level had plateaued, and I had gone as far as I could go, and I didn't know what else there was. And in a tour around the college, one of the advisors asked me what my interests were in high school. I'm like, yeah, I played basketball, I did chess and debate, and all of these different programs. I was like, I was the concert master of the violin. I did this, and she's like, wait, wait, wait. I mean, she's a concert master. I was like, yeah, I was the concert master. I play violin. She said, play? Do you still play? I'm like, yes. He's like, well, you talking about you want to do business? Did you know you can do music and business? And I was like, oh wow, like I didn't know any better, very innocently. And
Mm.
so she's like, yeah, but you have to pick your instrument back up. And so literally the day that she said that was the day of auditions for the orchestra at the college. And I went, learned the piece, and then I got into the big orchestra, and I led the community orchestra. And it was interesting because I saw other students who were performance majors, and the competitive side of me said, "Well, I'm better than them." You know, so I was like, I can do a performance degree too. So I was doubling in music education and performance. Um, and yeah, I mean, this is kind of how it turned out.
Right. It's fascinating. I wish we could have had a conversation like this, for me almost 40 years ago, because I had a similar story.
Mhm.
I grew up playing, a saxophone, particularly in middle school. And by the time I got to high school, I went to a school that was more competitive education based and that sort of thing. And my dad was like, well, you want to, keep playing saxophone? I'll buy you saxophones. I was like, nah, the school I'm going to is not, I'm not going to performance school. I'm going to a school that's more about, studying and books and all of that. Uh, and here I am, some 40 years later, so heavily involved in music, not playing any,
Yeah.
just playing music from artists like yourself and sharing music that way. But it's always something I think about in terms of, as much as I love music, the ability to actually play it and express it the way. Now, not that I can be anywhere near what you are on the violin, but the possibility of being able to do that, is something I think that everybody needs as you're developing and learning music. Whether it's playing
So,
violin or saxophone or developing your voice as an instrument, singing and piano, whatever it is, because it helps in so many different areas of life.
oh, I agree with that wholeheartedly. So the interesting thing about my life is that I got my music business degree. I found out that that was more like audio engineering, and
Mm,
I realized that with a performance degree, you still had to perform. So after I did my upper divisionals, which is a jury and basically in front of the entire music faculty on campus, and I passed with very like flying colors. Uh,
mm.
it all kind of hit me that I was like, you don't need a performance degree to perform. Like you can't walk into an audition and like slide them a piece of paper and say, here's my credentials. They're like, you still have to play. So I'm like, well, then what good is this paper? So I got real logical at a certain point. And the audio engineering aspect of the music business program had me feeling like I was going to have to get an internship when I got out of college. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to drop both of these and I'm going to pick up a major where I know for sure that if anything happened to me, I could always have a job, like a salary position. And so
Mm,
I got my music education degree. And as life goes, I've used all three of them, though. You
mm,
I've been, obviously performance, but then creating tracks and producing and all of that. I got that honest too because I was making beats on Fruity Loops in high school, and then that evolved, and then the music education aspect has been really what's happening with my orchestra at this point, to where
mm.
we really uh, we dive into various topics that you might not ever get to like develop in the classical setting as we know it today.
Right, right. You were talking about the producing and so I want to get to that.
Oh,
One interesting uh, piece to note that I saw when I was looking at your background, and it was particularly interesting to me because I'm a wrestling fan. So you produced and created the entrance music for Shinsuke Nakamura, who is a WWE superstar, wrestler, but was also a superstar wrestler in Japan before he came over here.
mhm.
How did that come about?
So shouts out to CFOs. They are the people who like originally created the track, and I was fortunate enough to be asked by the Jordan brand and the WWE to come in and be a part of Nakamura's entrance from one sector of the WWE world to another. It was like his debut in a bigger
Mm,
a bigger league, and
right.
they wanted to do something special, and so they called me in, and I was able to write my parts, over what was already there. And then when we did the performance, they let me just like solo in the beginning because nobody knew that he was moving to this other league. So when they
Mm.
saw me, it was just kind of like, yo, what is this? It's like we see this violinist and like, well, what is this? And when I finished my little thing, and when the track dropped in, it was pandemonium. It was just so from my understanding, it's like wrestling fans are saying it was like one of the top 10 entrances of all time. Like they're loving it like that, and that's been really how I've been received because of it. But again, shouts out to the CFOs. They really did a thing on that, made it special, and allowed me to really come in and just do my thing. Like when we were in the studio, they were kind of like, "Well, how would you play it?" And so
Mm.
I just did what I thought, and it came out to be very special, in the end.
Right, right, and it's still being used. I mean, when we see him, he's still, Again, I'm a wrestling fan. I watch, so when he still comes out, you still hear, your violin. I mean, they've added guitars and all that over it, but it's still, your piece,
Yeah,
that is in there, which is
yeah.
pretty dope. Um, so you mentioned the Jordan brand. You are one of four non-athletes that's represented by the Jordan brand. Talk
Mhm.
about that because that is huge.
Uh, that's probably been one of like the biggest blessings as far as my career, because what the type of reception that I get, kind of how I can pick people out and like see how much they understand about me, as far as how much they understand about themselves. Because the greatest the people that we call the goats have heard me play once and
Mm,
were automatically drawn to me, and it speaks volumes to me, to what I might represent to them. So
mm-hmm,
being a part of the Jordan brand has always been a family affair.
mm,
It's not really been, it's not a business thing at all. It's more like uh, MJ recognized when he saw my talent something in me that reminded him of obviously something in himself, because he handpicks everyone. So even the athletes, like he picks them. So for him to hear me play, understand my greatness, and have some vision, him signing me to the Jordan brand was like the name that I would drop consistently. It
mm-hmm,
was like whether it was directly or indirectly, just by the sheer notion of me being a a, a non-athlete brand ambassador, I was able to open some doors, and I believe that like my personality and my talent in the end kept those doors open. So the Jordan brand, big shouts out to them. I love them dearly, and yeah, I mean it's a marathon with them. We're still growing, and I've got some very special things in the works. I'll just say that.
excellent. It's Rhythm and Soul Radio. We are talking with Lee England Jr., known as the Soul Violinist. You mentioned, you've had a chance to play for some of the goats, and they hear you and they're drawn to you instantly. So to name drop a couple, Michael Jordan is one. There's Spike Lee is another.
Yeah,
There's Quincy Jones, who is another who came up to you and asked to start working with you as well, right?
yeah, yeah. That was amazing, right? And again, all of this kind of stems from the relationship with the Jordan brand. I can pinpoint various achievements in my life, and I can tie it directly to the Jordan brand. So I was doing um, Chris Paul's charity events with him and his family uh,
Mm,
back when he was in New Orleans. So it was like wherever he moved to, he brought me with him, right? So when he finally landed in LA, he brought me in to do his celebrity servers event, where he has him and his friends and his other celebrities come in, and they serve the people who donate to his charity, right? So it's like at Mastro's, it's like a big deal. And I come in and I play, I'm walking around and just cutting up, doing my thing.
mm,
And a lady saw me, who I love dearly, and she put me on stage at an event where they were honoring Elton John and George Lucas,
Mm.
Lady Gaga performed, and Quincy Jones was giving the award to Elton John.
Wow.
So I went on in the middle of the show, and I did my rendition of All of Me. And it was me, a piano player, upright bass, and cello. And I wrote this arrangement that made All of Me sound like Disney Fantasia, right?
Hmm.
So when I finished and I got off stage, I was sitting backstage because I was kind of trying to take it all in because it was a lot. I mean, if you
Right.
imagine, those, those are just four of the people that I'm naming because they were on stage. That has the list of who was in the audience just goes on and on. So I just give you
Wow.
those four, right? And so I sit backstage, just trying to collect myself. I got away from everybody and I just came and sat backstage because I was like, yo, that was big. Like that was a big deal. What just happened, and it went great.
Yeah.
I just need to just a moment to myself. And as I was sitting there backstage, um, I remember a lady came up to me and she said, "Everybody's looking for you, but I'm not going to tell them you're back here." Right? So let me relax. And as I'm relaxing, Quincy walks in and he comes and sits right next to me and he says, "I got two questions for you, man." He says, "What's your name and who did that arrangement?" Yeah, my name is Lee England Jr. I did that arrangement. He's like, that's all I need to know. And he walks on stage. He presents the award to Elton John and George Lucas, and then they all walk off stage with Lady Gaga, and they're talking in their circle. And I'm sitting there like, yo, what just happened? I'm like, yo, I gotta think of something to say. Like, man, this can't that can't be it, because
Right.
I for such a long time uh just idolized Quincy Jones. I still do,
Mm. Mm.
and I believe I manifested him, right? Because there's a video that I did where I walked down the Walk of Fame and I was playing Human Nature, right?
Mm.
Like this Michael Jackson tribute. And I went, of course, to Michael Jackson Star and I played. But then when I finished the video, I went and they filmed and I talked about Quincy Jones and his influence on music, and how
Right.
if I could be like anybody, I would be like him, And I was like, big shouts out to everybody, that had the hands in the production and all that kind of stuff. And then months later, I'm sitting next to him on the couch, and so like I said, when he came back in, he came with everyone, right? And Elton John turns and sees me, and he looks at Quincy. He says, "Hey," he says, "What are we gonna do with this guy?" Like, come over here, right? So we take pictures, and I'm still racking my mind, like, yo, what can I say to him to like further this conversation? And I went back and sat down, as everyone's clamoring over them. And when he's finished with the last person, he comes back and sits down next to me.
Mm.
Starts asking me questions, and we start finding out that there's a lot of similarities between the two of us. And he was floored by, in talking to his team afterwards. They would say things like, "What did you do to Quincy?" Like they weren't there to hear the performance. They're like, "What did you do?" They're like, "He hasn't been this excited about an artist in we don't know how long." you know
Wow.
so for him to see me and immediately, that was his response. When we started working together, the first thing that he did was he did a showcase for me at the Geffen Playhouse in LA, and they caught him coming in the building, and they asked him, you know, thank God for the cameraman. He just had the wherewithal to just go out and catch Quincy coming in the door. And he asked him, "Hey, how do you feel about Lee? We know we put this on for him, but how do you feel about him?" And he says, "Lee is the future of music." He says he's
Wow.
what Duke Ellington and I used to talk about, because music needs to be decategorized. And he said, and yeah, Lee's going to do that. He said Lee's going to take music where it's supposed to be, right? And upon seeing that, what's interesting is that I didn't know what he was talking about.
Mm.
I had no idea what he was talking about. And now, based on me finishing my album and we starting to really, really um, put everything I have into these new creations that I'm writing, and putting everything into the orchestra, I get it, and I see what he means, because I don't create with uh, any musical boundaries.
Mm.
Just create what I hear. I feel blessed because whoever the musical gods or angels are that inform my life, they sing so sweetly to me. So all I do is translate. I feel like I'm just in a position to hear these songs and be able to translate them into something that we can understand. So, um, yeah, I believe what he said now, and I look forward to you know the culmination of a beginning. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
however you so eloquently put that, but that's really what it is. Like the, I don't know. I'm just gonna hit the ground running. It's really one of those. I'm gonna do more acting, like moving and making. Not. I'm gonna be more in action than in talk. I'm gonna let the music speak for itself, and at the same time, I'm going to continue to push the envelope and just get myself out there, because what I've realized in my career is one thing that I've kind of um, hoarded in a sense is my live performances. I would do
Mm,
a lot of corporate stuff, and I've had a lot of fans that are like, "Yo, when you doing your show? When you doing your show?" And it would always be, I was always waiting for somebody to book me, and so now I'm not waiting anymore, and that's what the show was. In November, it was me not waiting, and it was special, and yeah, it was just eye opener for me to say, give, just give. Like
mm.
stop keeping all the good music for yourself. Like, give it up.
Right, right, right. There's so much to talk to you about, so much to come around to. It's Rhythm and Soul Radio. We are talking with Lee England Jr. Um, as we talk about Quincy Jones, when I went to your YouTube, there's a and I'm gonna want you to give all the information so people can follow you, etc. But your YouTube in particular was fascinating because there's a video from I guess 5 years ago, We the People,
Hmm.
that you included Quincy Jones. And when I watched it, I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting that he had Quincy in the video. Now,
Yeah.
again, this is 5 years ago, but it is kind of like a little bit of all of you. It's you playing violin, it's you singing, you're rapping a little bit. It's a little bit of everything in there.
Yeah.
Um, and you mentioned you create your music like without any boundaries. So how is it that with all these different things going on, you're able to figure out how to put what together? Because because you're also telling a story,
Hmm.
and it's so powerful, and it seems like you're doing this all yourself. So, and I'm sure there are people helping you, but it comes out of you, and you have to direct it even though for those helping you in terms of this needs to be here and that needs to be there, and I want this shot this way for the video and all
Yeah.
of that. So how do you kind of harness all of that? Because
Um,
that seems like a lot.
let's just say I've been making music for a long time. You know, like when I think about like 2002, that's when I graduated from high school. So I was making beats all through high school and then all through college. And the interesting thing is when I was in LA, I never was so about like making money. Like my relationship with money is very interesting, right?
Mm,
I've lived a life of, I would say, great wealth, but that isn't how other people might understand wealth. Like my wealth comes from being able to do whatever I want, whenever I want, without question,
mm,
and having the resources to do so. So when I was in LA, and I think this is where it all kind of came together. Um, I was street performing, which was informing me of what songs people liked, whether they came to hear me or not. You know,
mm,
so if I can subdue an audience of people who had no intention of seeing me that day, uh, I will decimate a crowd that's captive. Like if
mm,
you're sitting down and you're gonna listen to me, oh, I know exactly what to do, right? So I was doing so well street performing and selling CDs that uh, I might have spent 5 days out of the month street performing tops, plus other gigs. But the rest of the days, 25, 26 days, however many, I was creating. I was just
mm,
sitting and tinkering and throwing everything at the wall and seeing what works. And um, my styles have evolved and changed and they went this way and that way. So I've had so long to develop my the sauce. So
right.
I've had so long to develop the sauce that now I know what ingredients to put, and it becomes a knowing one, but then two, it's still very experimental. It's like I don't necessarily adhere to all of the things that is music of our day and age, but I hear things in a way that I think people are going to have to evolve their listening a little,
Mm-hmm.
because imagine me as a violinist literally growing up in the orchestra, growing up in when I went to church, and that's a huge part of like my musical development. I sat in the pit with the musicians, so
Mm.
my life has always been surrounded by music. Like my mother and father, I love them dearly, and I appreciate because they were always playing music. There was always music in the house. There weren't any other musicians in my immediate family, but we definitely loved music. And my cousins, I had an aunt who sang. I had other cousins that played instruments, but nothing that I ever heard of until I was older. But all of this musical influence sitting in the epicenter of like music for the entirety of my life has given me a diversity of like taste buds. So sitting in the orchestra, listening to woodwinds and flutes and timpani and triangle and cello and violin and all of these instruments all at the same time has given me a palette of colors to work from that might um, it might not be yet what everyone is like ready for. It's like I'm eating steaks. Well, I don't eat steak. I'm a vegan, but I'm eating a plate that's very um, distinct and intentional. Like I know why everything is in all these different places and these different sounds. So it's like I want to evolve listening in a way to bring like opera and hip hop and R&B and gospel all into one kind of a space and meld it all together into something beautiful that people can that's palatable still. you know
Mm.
that's not even intentional. I just feel like when people hear music the way that I intend for them to hear it, which is with a large orchestra in a concert hall, um, with acoustics and all that kind of stuff and everything live, even the electronic instruments being played, on a like synthesizers and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think when people hear it like that, it will make sense. And when you combine that with the progression of a show, the way that it has these peaks and valleys, and
Yeah.
I understand putting these things together and melding one sound to the next. And, it's like the orchestra to me is a major cheat code because
Mm.
you can go in and out of ideas and motifs and thoughts and add this and take this away, and it can be very complex to the very most simple thing, and then you add like beatboxing and like body percussion and singing and like listen, where I'm
Man.
on my way to, like I'm there. Somebody called me and said, hey, we've got this huge venue for you tomorrow. I've got sheet music. I've got I've got the wherewithal to put a show together immediately. But I know that it's a building, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's almost ready for that unveiling where it's like my team. They said to me when they first heard my project, they said there are going to be a lot of people trying to emulate your style, and they said the best thing that you can do is create those musicians, gift people with your sound and teach people how to do the things that you're doing. And so it's like I'm kind of building this house slowly from the ground up. And it's like I, I can't explain it. I just know this is about to happen, and I know like I'm on the right track, and I know that uh, I'm gonna need a contingent of musicians who are technically sound, but also understand the approach, like
Mm-hmm.
to push this into like I tell people in the orchestra. I said if aliens were to visit uh, the Earth, they would want to hear my orchestra. Like
Right,
that's
right.
what I'm getting to. Like it's almost there. Like
I,
almost.
I can feel it, man. Just talking to you, I'm so excited for what's next. I'm excited for what I've already heard. I'm excited for what's next. Um, One more thing about what I've already heard, and back to the YouTube again. The intro video on your YouTube is set up kind of like as an intro. Describing your journey um, as you, and this was again 4 years ago or so, your
Mhm,
journey to playing at Carnegie Hall. And
mhm.
given this conversation is so interesting because I don't know if you played Carnegie Hall yet on your own, but that is only a part of what you're describing now. The journey to Carnegie Hall is only like a small piece
It's gonna be a
of what
foot.
you just described.
It's a foot. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. And you know what? And I didn't give it as much credit as I should have. But I did play Carnegie Hall in 2019.
Mm,
It wasn't in the big room, but
okay.
it was at Carnegie Hall. And I didn't see it like, oh, this is the major manifestation that I was looking for. But it did happen, and I downplayed it.
Mm,
I see now, like I downplayed it a little bit, but I know that that was just the first of many, because the entity that I'm creating, one, it can live on its own. Like I want to create something timeless, right? I want to create a group that can perform and be larger than life, whether I'm there or not. So when you see the rollout, when you see how it actually is supposed to look, uh,
mm,
it will. It's gonna transform music. Like I already see it. It's like it's happening. All I'm doing is just walking out the steps to get there, and I'm very appreciative of like my progress in the music business and in my career and in life, because I was never fast tracked to the top. I was never fast
mm,
tracked to like mainstream. But I
right.
did do every single rung of this, like, or every single step of this ladder as I'm going up. And I believe that the reasoning for that is because I'm supposed to be able to turn around and tell people how I got there.
Mm,
It's like if somebody was just elevating me way up, I wouldn't have understood the steps and the heartache and the pain and the struggles and the triumph that goes with climbing like this, so that I can take what I learned in my 38 years and condense it into 10 minutes or 15 minutes or a master class, and show somebody else how to get there much quicker than I did, and have resources for them to use, so that you don't have to even go through that. Like you can just jump to this.
right, right. Um, there's so much to talk about, so I won't keep going. I want to get into the single. Beyond is the single because we're gonna have to do this again. This is gonna have to be like a multi-part conversation
I'm with it.
as
I'm
we
with it.
go along. Um, Beyond is the current single. Talk about that. There's the lyric video out. That's really really cool. The song itself is just a great feeling, you know, of
Yeah,
a song, and I should mention because we feature independent music, independent artists regularly. That's what we're about here on Rhythm and Soul Radio. The fact that you've done all of this independently is just amazing, and just what we're about championing. So I'm so glad we're able to talk to you and you're able to share what you've shared so far, and there's so much more to go. But talk about Beyond.
yeah. Well, beyond, again, is like a culmination of so many things. I've always felt like I was a troubadour or a journeyman, and I've always been intentional about trying to understand uh, just the magnitude and simplicity of life. And it's like it shows in my musical development, like how I've gone from, you know, if you saw me on stage when I first started performing to seeing me now, you would see like the evolution of an artist. Because when I
Mm,
first started out, I was just so shy, but I was also shy in real life. And the
hmm.
only time that you really saw the bravado, or you saw like my confidence, was when I was behind my instrument, to
Hmm.
getting to the point where like I have many instruments now, and I stand out front, and these instruments are just tools that I use. to get my point across and to show that spirit works through me. Uh,
Mm.
so Beyond uh, was a result of so much searching. Um, it's like I have another song in my album that'll be coming out. There's a song called Bad English. And the term bad English, if you think about tennis, when you hit the ball, you put English on it.
Mm-hmm.
You want it to go
Mm-hmm.
a certain way. And in the relationships that I was having, uh, I was I wanted to go a certain way and it didn't. We'll call it bad English, right? And in bad English, I find myself pleading to the light that like I'm gonna stand here until you shine on me, you know, like just
Mm.
pleading with all of my heart, like I know you're there, like I'm just waiting, I'm gonna stand here until the light shines on me. And I went from that to understanding that the light is never going to shine on you, it shines from within. And so
Mm.
Beyond just became the celebration of that like resolution. It became a celebration and yeah, it's just it's really that. It's a ceremonious kind of a song to say like, yo, I'm here, like, and I'm going for it,
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's Lee England Jr. We've been talking to him. We're going to have to talk to you many, many more times. There's so much more to talk about. The current single is Beyond. Tell everybody how they find you, social media, website, and how they purchase the single and get ready for the album.
Oh yeah. Well, all of my social media is the same. It's Lee England Jr. So I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube.com/Lee England Jr. And the website is again LeeEnglandJr.com. So I'm not hard to find. If you need me for some events or whatever, production, I'm doing sync stuff now, so starting to
Okay.
get, I'm starting to unload all this music. Like I mean, literally, if you like, my friends are the happiest and upset people with me at all times,
mm.
right? Like they're happy for me when they get to hear the music and they're like, "Oh, this is amazing, bro!" Like, dang, and then they're mad and get mad at me because they're like, "But I can't take this home right now. Like, when are you going to release this?" Like, I have a pact with one of my boys that if I don't release this album soon, he's gonna steal my laptop and just leak it.
Well, yeah, I think you want to release it so you can get the
Yeah, yeah,
benefit of it.
I don't want to leak my music, man.
Absolutely. Lee, thank you so much, man. We will definitely talk more and more. Look forward to when the album does come out. Well, maybe that'll be our next time we come back and have this conversation.
Dope, dope, dope.
All right. It's Rhythm and Soul Radio, Lee England Jr. Here is Beyond.